Hi, Filmatics. Welcome to the show. Today we have a very special guest. We have Art Brown, and he's an Emmy-winning executive producer and showrunner and writer who just executive produced Dragon's Race to the Edge for DreamWorks Animation, which has 6 Emmy nominations and 1 win. Let's welcome him to the show. Hi, Art. Welcome to the show.
Hey, how's it going?
Thanks for being with us today on Filmatics.
Sure, my pleasure.
And where are we recording with you today?
Where am I located?
Yeah.
In Brentwood, California.
Oh, great. So, I have to ask you, did you grow up here in Los Angeles?
No, I'm actually from Pittsburgh. Excuse me, from the East Coast. I grew up there. My parents actually they were theater majors at Carnegie Mellon University. So they met there. My mom was Brazilian, and she came in on a Rockefeller acting scholarship and met my dad there. So once my sister was actually born, my dad followed her to Brazil, which is a whole nother really cute story. But my sister was born there, and then they moved back to the States. I was born in Pittsburgh, and we settled down there. So when I was about 16, right before my junior year in high school, we moved out to California.
Oh, wow. So your dad met your mom in Brazil, did you say?
No, they met at Carnegie Mellon University in Pittsburgh, but she was a Brazilian actress who had come in to study, and he met her there, told her he was going to marry her the first day he met her, and all that sort of stuff. So it was a pretty cute story.
Yeah, sounds like a movie to me. You know, my dad met my mom in Italy when he was a pilot in the Navy. So those are beautiful stories. Yeah. And so when you were little, what kind of films did you have a favorite film growing up?
My parents, I had an interesting upbringing because they were theater majors, and they were pretty, they exposed me to stuff early. They took me to see The Godfather when I was 7.
Wow.
That was probably my
7.
Yeah. That was one of my first movies that I remember. But they would always expose me to things, and they knew I could handle it. I remember Close Encounters being a big impression on me when I was a kid. Rocky, those were movies that inspired me growing up. But they took me to see like Lenny Bruce. Me and my sister were sitting by ourselves because we didn't have seats together. So we were sitting there, and people were looking at us like, who are these little kids at Lenny Bruce right now? But they were great that way. They were very, very much open. They would discuss things with us. Nothing was ever off topic or too racy or whatever. They would just explain stuff to us, whether it was explaining to me how my godfather and his wife got pregnant, or some other deeper meaning behind some film we saw. So it was pretty cool upbringing.
So those were your parents' choices. Did you have any say of like, hey, Mom, Dad, I'd really like to go see Escape to Witch Mountain or any of those kind of things?
Well, when I was growing up, it was in the I was born in '65, so like I said, I was 7, so that was when Godfather came out. But it's funny. I don't remember being. I remember being interested in good film, even from a young age. Like I wasn't like, I'm a kid, I need to watch kid films. I never had that. That didn't mean I didn't watch them. Like I said, E.T., Close Encounters, those sorts of things. Those, Star Wars growing up, all that stuff. But if you got to remember too, like there wasn't a whole lot of those were the family movies back then. There wasn't a whole lot of movie animation back then, besides like early Disney stuff. Little Mermaid, original one, that kind of stuff. Um, but like I was always like a little older for my age. You know, they would. I remember sitting at home with them on Friday nights, and they'd let me watch Saturday Night Live with like John Belushi and Eddie Murphy, and you know. So in terms of movies, it was family stuff.
Oh, great. So then, so when did you start getting interested? Like, did you have a favorite Criterion film or any of those films? It sounds like they must have watched all kind of films like that as well, right?
We watched all sorts of stuff. You know, my dad, you know, they left the business for a while, and they opened up a bunch of clothing stores. And this was in the time like there was all there. It was hippie time. There was like they. My dad used to wear clogs and like
Oh,
bell bottom shorts and had his beard. It was hilarious. I mean, he and then he sort of got wanted to get back into the business, so he started producing commercials and stuff. And so then I started. I was like 12, and I was PAing for him on shoots and stuff. So I
wow.
was around. I was around it a lot. But I really didn't know at that point that I would go into it because my parents always. I remember them always saying, "You don't want to go into this business," you know. And I was a big sports guy, so I grew up playing sports. My sister, my older sister, she was the one. She loved to read. You know, she became a novelist and a poet, and I always look at her as like she's the real writer. But yeah, I think I didn't really know back then that this is where I would end up. I actually thought it wouldn't be where I would end up, and it wasn't until I got to Berkeley really. Although I had a couple little classes in high school out here where we made some films and stuff, made some short films, but I really didn't get it until I was at Berkeley, and I actually went to London for a semester and ended up doing a play over there because I started out as an actor, and that really got me going in terms of my love for sort of changed directions in my career because I got into law school. I went to law school. I was like number one in my class, but I never wanted to practice. So um, once I got the bug, I got the bug, and I was just sort of figuring out finding my way. You know, first as an actor, then as a writer, and then when I started writing, I didn't know anything about it, and people were like, "Oh, you're a writer," and I was like, "What the hell does that mean?" And that became sort of my love for it. Sort of started there because as I started to do it and started to learn more about it, I began to realize that it was in me and that it was something that I enjoyed doing.
So you went to Berkeley as an actor, as a theater major. Then you studied and actually got. Did you get into law school? You said, or you studied law? You were
Yeah, I'll tell you a good story. I didn't go. I was not a theater major at Berkeley. I was an
okay.
econ major.
Okay.
I didn't know when I went to Berkeley that that's what I wanted to do. I was more business minded, and I was playing football. I played football for them, so I was into that. And as my college came to an end, I had applied to law school, took the LSAT. Didn't really know what I was going to do yet, and but I did know by that point that I wanted to try out some acting. So I came down to LA and I booked a lead in a Roger Corman movie that took me over to Peru for like a couple months. So I thought that was pretty cool, and I thought it was, I came back from that going, this is easy, man. You go in, you audition, you get a job. But then, reality sets in. And when I got back, things slowed down a bit. And we had a good friend of ours who was an attorney. And he said, look, man, you got into some good schools because the year before I had gotten into SC, UCLA, and Loyola. And I didn't really want to go. And he goes, why don't you go to night school? And I didn't even know you could. So I looked into it. The only one that had night school was Loyola. So I called there on a Thursday in August and I said, hey, listen, I got into your day program last year. I want to see about getting into your night program. And they were like, dude, it's Thursday. School starts on Monday. You have to reapply. There's a huge waiting list, all this stuff. So I was like, okay. So I put on a coat and tie and I went down to the next day and I found the dean of admissions and I was like, can I talk to you for a minute? She goes, I'll give you 30 seconds. And I said, I got into your day program last year. I want to go to the night program. She went and pulled up my records and she was like, well, your records are above anybody on the waiting list. And there was this great moment where she looked across at me and she goes, you sure you want to do this? And I was like, yes. And she just said, here's your class list. Here's your book list. School starts on Monday. And then I was able to repay her because I ended up being number one in my class my freshman year, and I got a scholarship, and that was kind of cool that she had taken a chance on me. But I went and clerked in the summer just to make sure, but I knew law wasn't something I really wanted to do because I started writing while I was in law school, and law school actually teaches you to be a better writer.
Yeah.
A lot of law school is writing and editing yourself, and so it just happened to come at a time where things sort of came together.
Oh wow, yeah, because writing to pass the bar, and you passed the bar and got accepted to all those top schools. But if it's not in your heart, it's not in your heart. And so you think that like you wasted all that time, but actually you were learning to write because you got to write all those essays, and then you're extremely bright to get into Berkeley. Like you know is it's great. So when you were writing, did you just think like, what did you start thinking about? Did you think about your favorite directors or anything, or you just started writing stories?
Yeah, I started with a buddy of mine in acting class, and who was my first writing partner, and we just started writing what we thought was funny. We wrote our first script was really out there. It was a spoof comedy. It was really fun to write. We didn't end up selling it, but it got us an agent. And then our second script was called Best Men, and that was with Drew Barrymore, Dean Cain, Andy Dick, Luke Wilson, that we were both in and wrote and co-produced. Again, that was another moment where we were on set and people said, you don't know how hard this is to get a movie made. And we were like, what do you mean? We wrote it and we're making it. No clue. And ignorance is bliss because, 10 years later when you go, oh shit, we were lucky. But that sort of started that. And then his name was Tracy Frame, and Tracy and I went on to set up about 3 other projects, 2 at Universal, 1 at Warner Brothers. And one of the Warner Brothers one was still today is probably the most famous script that hasn't been made in Hollywood. It's called Surrender Dorothy. It's a sequel to The Wizard of Oz that we did with Flower Films and Drew and all that. And that was a lot of fun. So we had a lot of success early, and then career shifted because Tracy at that point wanted to act more than he wanted to write. So we ended up splitting up as writing partners. And when you do that, when you're a team, you might as well have not written anything because they can't tell who wrote what. They don't know what your voice is versus your combined voice. You pretty much have to start over.
Oh man.
So that. Mm-hmm.
And then so when Tracy went to go acting, and then did your agent drop you, or does he say, "Hey, let me see, give me a script, it's solo"?
Yeah, they were by that point. We were at ICM, and they made it without saying it. They made it pretty clear that they didn't know what the hell to do. And so I went off and started writing on my own, and then I also teamed up with another buddy of mine, and we ended up writing. This was like really, really early on with internet content, and we got approached by a company called The Romp, and we worked for them, and we wrote some wacky, funny short form internet content, and this was like really early stages, so we were kind of ahead of our time with that. But that was like cool and fun. And then that friend of mine and I had a falling out, and so there I was starting again. And then I hooked up with another buddy of mine from acting class, Doug Sloan, who we ended up doing The Boy Who Cried Werewolf and Dragons together and all that. And Doug and I, he was working with another writer, and we had always kind of wanted to work together. But it's kind of like, when you're with a partner, you're kind of like, it's kind of like you're dating and you guys both like each other, but you don't, the timing has to be right. So we started writing a few scripts on the side, and then he ended up splitting up with his partner, and then he and I got approached, and we started writing. We pitched to Nickelodeon, The Boy Who Cried Werewolf, and then we got that made, which he and I wrote and executive produced. Got nominated for a Writers Guild Award for it. And then after that, we wrote a couple other scripts for Nickelodeon before we moved on from there.
Wait, well, let's tell everyone. The Boy Who Cried Werewolf, right? That you wrote and produced for Nickelodeon Television, starring Brooke Shields and Victoria Justice. This your film, The Boy Who Cried Werewolf, won the DG Award for the Best Children's Program and was nominated for several other awards, including WGA nomination for art. And at its release, it was the most successful movie in Nick history. So congratulations on that, Art.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks. That was really fun. It was really fun to shoot that movie. Doug had his own career doing a lot of Disney films, but that was sort of my first big movie that I wrote and also produced. So that sort of set the tone for what would happen later. Getting that experience as exec producer. Shot it in Vancouver, which is great. It's like one of my favorite cities, and it was fun. It was fun to work with. We had a great cast, and everybody was really, really super cool. I'm still close to a lot of those people today, and that's what eventually led us to Dragons.
Oh yeah, I'd love to hear the story how Dragons came about, because I want to just share a little bit with our audience about Dragons, so they can kind of get like what it's all about. So you wrote Dragons Race to the Edge for DreamWorks, right? And there was a total of, the series had 119 episodes on both Cartoon Network and streaming on Netflix. And Dragons to this day is DreamWorks' most successful animated TV series, and it's honored by critics and fans and has received 6 Emmy nominations with 1 win, multiple Annie nominations and wins, multiple Kids Screens Awards, and nominated for the Saturn Award alongside with, oh my gosh, your competition was Game of Thrones. And so it was the only family series to be recognized. Yes, I'd love to talk about this show. So how did it all start? And yeah, please share.
It was funny because I didn't have any kids, so I had never been married, no kids, and so I didn't really watch a lot of animated movies, to be honest with you. And Doug and I got approached, hey, DreamWorks is going to make their movie into a series, and we were literally, I had never seen the movie, and I was literally like, what is this animated thing I got to watch? And then we watched the movie, and we were like, this thing's amazing. And we went in, and it was down to us and another writing team, a husband and wife from Primetime sitcom. And we ended up actually not getting the showrunner role at first. They gave it to them, and they just weren't really right for it. It was a kids action show, but they were, they came from Primetime, so they wowed them with that. But anyway, they asked if we'd come in and be co-EPs and be in the writer's room. So we were like, it's one of those moments in your career where it's not how you plan it to be, but it's being open to opportunity and not knowing where it's going to take you. So we were like, you know what the hell? Let's do it for a year. We'll do the writer's room for a year. We'll get to know the people at DreamWorks. We'll make a little cash, et cetera, et cetera. And we started working there, and it was pretty obvious right away that that the prior showrunners were having difficulties with the show. And so Doug and I, about I'm going to say about 6-8 months in, DreamWorks approached us and said, "Hey, what would you guys do differently if you were running the show?" And we were ready for that question. And so we just sort of said we would do this, 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 and this. They ended up firing the showrunners and promoting us. And then we went on to, like you said, went on to be nominated, won a lot of awards, it started off on Cartoon Network. And then we did 2 seasons on Cartoon Network. And then when DreamWorks did their deal with Netflix, we bounced over there and we redid it as Race to the Edge. So that was sort of the opportunity to age up the characters, to make it a little more edgy. And it was a great time. I mean, we really loved working the show. I directed all the records, so I sort of got my acting fill with that. We had a lot of the same actors from the movies. We had Jay Baruchel, we had T.J. Miller, we had Christopher Mintz-Plasse, and then we got to use people like Mark Hamill for a bad guy, Alfred Molina. I mean, I got to direct Alfred Molina. I was like, oh my God. So it was cool. We really took the show, and we, the way I've always looked at kids and family is we didn't make a show we made a show for us. We made a show that we'd want to watch, and you hope that your sensibility will translate over. So that was 6 years. 6 years, 119 episodes. But it was fun. It was a good time.
Did you have any inspiration on like your writing or how you work with your writing partner?
Well, we were always came from with our writers, we'd have a small writer's room. We didn't have a big one. We didn't really believe in a sitcom type writer's room. We believed in outlining and then letting our writers go write. And then if they could get us 70% there, awesome. And then Doug and I would story edit and make sure that the voice was the same and the tone was the same. But Doug and I probably wrote half of the episodes ourselves. It got to the point where I literally once wrote an episode in a day. That wasn't the usual, but we knew if we had to, and that was one, and ended up being one of our better episodes, weirdly enough. But we didn't believe in we believed in quality over quantity. We didn't feel the need to keep the writers there late to burn them out, just to do it, which a lot of showrunners do. They keep them there. We were like, you're out of here at 5. Obviously, if we had a deadline and we needed to stay later, we would. But then at that point, they're fired up to, you care for them and they'll do anything for you. And we promoted a lot of people from within. We always we felt that was our most important job on the show, was to help people along with their careers. So we would make writers assistants, writers. We would make story people, editor. We'd make assistant editors. We would make storyboard people, directors. We really had a way of we looked at our job, in addition to making the show, obviously, was to sort of bring people along and send them on their way. A lot of our writers are now showrunners. A lot of our writers' assistants are writers on shows. We made one guy the youngest editor ever at DreamWorks. So it was really cool, and we just believed in that. There were times when we'd come in I would say I did this about probably twice a month. I just walk in the middle of the day and grab the writer's room and take them all to see a movie. And we would just go, whatever movie was if everyone was talking about the new Batman, the new Spider-Man, or whatever. and I knew they wanted to see it, I would just be like, come on, we're playing hooky, let's go. And we would just, so, doing all that, because you know what? Like, whenever people would get stressed, I would just go, hey, we're making a fucking cartoon, man. Take it easy. Because we're not curing cancer. It's not brain surgery. So we kept it light. Like, I always wanted to keep it light and make people, empower people. That's why we promoted a lot of people. Was we want to empower them, give them ownership. You know what I mean? I didn't never cared where ideas came from. I wasn't precious about anything. That's the way I am. Like, even in the records, I would let the actors go. Especially, you got someone like T.J. Miller. You let him go. We would write like just the beginnings of scenes. Once I really got to know him, he and I had a shorthand, and I would just listen to him. And can't use that, can't use that. Yeah, that, can't use that. And we would just riff and have a good time, and we just try to always. Of course, there was occasionally some difficult times, and as is with a lot of people and executives and all that sort of stuff. But we protected all of our crew and our writers, and we took the brunt from. We always felt that was our role too, to take the brunt of anything from the studio.
Oh, I love that. I love how that you let them improv too, because had some other our direct animation directors, and they one did it like backwards. They would let them improv the whole thing, and then they wrote it afterwards. So is it
Yep.
is it harder to do, like, say, if you have it written out and they're improving to write it in, or is it kind of easy?
Yeah, I mean, look, just because I wrote it doesn't mean that's the best it's going to get, right? And you hire actors for a reason. You want them to bring something to it. You want them to make it their own. So I was always, of course, there are certain things story wise that you have to get in. But other than that, I would let them go. Like, I know Jay Baruchel and I became very close, and there were certain, especially with his character, there was just always some studio notes that were just like so expositional and miserable, and he would get so frustrated. I'd be like, dude, it ain't me, man. Come on, I feel you. I got to get it. So as long as we were cool like that, it worked out in the end. And the idea of letting them riff and making it their own, it's just going to make the product better. At the end of the day, that's what you want. You want to. It always has to be about the show. It can't be about anybody's ego. It can't be about anything other than putting the best show up there that you can, and that requires everyone to get their ego out of the way and just do their job and know that it's a collaborative effort among everybody, whether you're a director, writer, special effects, animator, storyboard artist, character designer. It doesn't matter. Like, it's all about. It's not. Don't take it personally if we don't go that direction. It's not you. It's just what's ever best for the show, and that includes the writing. Like, I'd be the first one to change the script. I've seen other showrunners who are, serious about every word being that, and it would drive me crazy. I would say, like, how do you do that? Like, how do you think that what you wrote is going to be better than what can come out of T.J. Miller's mouth when he's riffing and he's serious, right? Like, why would you do that? So people are different, but that's the way I always did it.
Oh, well, I wanted to say, thank you to our beautiful Filmatics audience. We are hitting #1 in countries all around the world, and I want to invite everyone back to part 2 with Art Miller, because we have so much more to talk about, and his brand new shows he's working on. So coming back for part 2 with Art Miller. Thank you for listening, everyone.